The whole church turned to look when she walked in. Not at the bride. At her. Dahlia Reed stood in the doorway in a gown of deep red silk. Her dark hair was swept up. Her chin was high. And on her arm stood a man the entire room recognized. A man worth $9 billion. At the altar, the groom dropped his champagne glass. It shattered on the marble floor. And the bride, Dahlia's own little sister, went as white as her wedding dress. 2 years ago, these people had thrown Dahlia away. They'd called her bitter. They'd called her too much. They'd told her she had no one to blame but herself. Today, Dahlia Reed had come to their wedding, and she was about to show them, in front of everyone, exactly what they had lost. This is her story, and it starts like most of these stories do, with a broken heart. Dahlia Reed had spent her whole life being the other sister. There were two Reed girls. Dahlia was the older one, and Sienna was the pretty one. That's just how the family talked about them, right out loud, like it was a fact like the weather. Dahlia was the smart one, the dependable one, the one with the good head on her shoulders. Sienna was the beauty. And in the Reed family, everyone knew which one of those things actually mattered. Dahlia wore a size 18. She was soft and curvy, with a round, kind face and warm eyes. And from the time she was a teenager, her own mother had made her feel like that was a problem she'd failed to fix. "You have such a pretty face, Dahlia," her mother used to sigh. "If you just lose a little weight, you could have anyone you wanted. Like your sister." Sienna was slim and golden and got everything she pointed at. The attention, the compliments, the benefit of every doubt. And Dahlia learned, early, to make herself small, to not ask for much, to be grateful for the scraps of approval that came her way. But Dahlia had one thing that was entirely her own. She could build. Ever since she was little, Dahlia had loved buildings. The shape of them, the way a good space could make a person feel safe. She studied hard, worked harder, and became an architect. And she was good. Quietly, seriously good. It was the one place in her life where no one could call her the lesser sister. On paper, with a pencil in her hand, Dahlia Reed was nobody's runner-up. And then she met Caleb Monroe. And for a little while, she let herself believe she could have the other things too. Caleb was charming, ambitious, the kind of man who always seemed to be on his way up. He pursued Dahlia, and she, who had never in her life been pursued, fell completely. For 2 years they were together. He proposed on a rooftop with a small ring he said was all he could afford for now. She said yes before he finished the sentence. She brought him home to meet the family. And that was her mistake. Because the moment Caleb Monroe walked into the Reed house and saw Sienna, slim, golden, glittering Sienna, Dahlia watched something change in his eyes. She told herself she was imagining it. She told herself for almost a year. She wasn't imagining it. She found out the way people always find out. A text on his phone, then another, then the truth laid out plain. Her fiancé and her little sister. For months. Behind her back, Dahlia confronted them, shaking, in her parents' living room. She thought, God help her, she actually thought that her family would stand with her. They didn't. "Don't make a scene, Dahlia," her mother said. "You know how dramatic you get. These things happen," her father said, staring at the carpet. And Sienna, beautiful Sienna, with Caleb's hand already resting on her back like he'd always belonged there, looked at her older sister with something close to pity and said the words Dahlia would never, ever forget. "Come on, Dee. Be honest with yourself. You let yourself go. Did you really think a man like Caleb was going to stay? I didn't steal anything. I just gave him what you couldn't." The whole family stood there, and not one of them said a word in Dahlia's defense. So Dahlia did the only thing she could do. She picked up her purse. She walked out, and she let them believe, every single one of them, that she was the bitter one, the dramatic one, the one who couldn't keep a man because she couldn't keep her figure. She cried for exactly 1 month, and then she stopped, because Dahlia Reed decided something, alone in her little apartment, with mascara running down her face. She decided she was done shrinking. She was done apologizing for taking up space. She was done waiting for people who would never, ever choose her. She poured everything she had into the one thing that had never let her down. Her work. 2 years passed, and Dahlia Reed became somebody. Her designs started winning awards. Her name started appearing in the kind of magazines that mattered in her world. She made partner at her firm before anyone expected her to. She bought her own place. She learned to walk into a room of important people and not shrink an inch. Her family noticed the way families do in a small and grudging way. Dahlia is doing well for herself, her mother would say at dinner, in the same tone she might use to say the weather had been mild. But the favorite was still the favorite. Sienna was planning a wedding now, and the whole Reed family orbited around the bride-to-be like she was the sun. The bride-to-be who was marrying Caleb Monroe. Dahlia had made her peace with it, or she thought she had. She didn't think about Caleb anymore. She didn't think about any of them more than she had to. And then a man named Julian Vance walked into her firm's offices and asked, specifically, for her. Julian Vance was a name everyone knew. He was 39, the founder of a technology and development empire worth $9 billion. He was famously private, famously hard to please. He'd seen every architect in the country, and he'd chosen Dahlia's firm to design something that mattered to him deeply. Not an office tower, not a flashy headquarters, but a home. A real one. The first home he'd ever built for himself, after a lifetime of hotel suites and empty penthouses. "I've seen your work," he told Dahlia, in the conference room, with his sharp gray eyes fixed on her like she was the only person there. "You design spaces that feel like someone lives in them. Most architects design spaces that feel like someone's watching. I don't want to be watched. I want to come home." He slid a folder across the table. "I like it to be you. Just you." Dahlia worked on Julian Vance's house for 4 months. And somewhere in those 4 months, something changed. It started as work. Long meetings. Walks through the empty lot where the house would stand. But Julian wasn't what she expected. He wasn't cold. He was tired and guarded and lonelier than any man with $9 billion had a right to be. He asked her real questions. He listened to her answers. He laughed, rarely, but really at the things she said. And he looked at her, not the way her mother looked at her, with that flicker of disappointment. Not the way Caleb had looked at her, like she was a placeholder until something better came along. Julian looked at Dahlia like she was the most interesting person he'd met in years. Like her body was simply the shape that the most interesting person he'd met in years happened to come in. One evening, standing on the half-built frame of his future home as the sun went down, Julian said quietly, "I didn't hire you for the house, Dahlia. The house was an excuse. I saw a photo of you at an awards dinner 6 months ago, and I've been trying to find a reason to be in a room with you ever since." Dahlia's heart did something it hadn't done in 2 years. But she learned to be careful with her heart. So she said nothing. She just let herself, very quietly, begin to hope. And then the invitation arrived. It came on heavy cream cardstock with gold lettering. "Mr. and Mrs. Reed request the honor of your presence at the marriage of their daughter Sienna to Mr. Caleb Monroe." But it wasn't just an invitation. Folded inside was a handwritten note from Sienna herself. "Dee, I know things have been weird, but you're my sister, and family is family. I want you there. Actually, I'd love for you to do a reading at the ceremony. It would mean so much to Mom. Please don't make this hard. S." Dahlia read it 3 times, and then she understood exactly what it was. It was a trap dressed up as an olive branch. Sienna didn't want her sister there to heal anything. Sienna wanted Dahlia in that church, alone, unmarried, the older sister who couldn't keep her man, standing up in front of the whole family to read pretty words at the wedding of the fiancé who'd left her. It was the final humiliation, the bow on top, proof for everyone to see that Sienna had won and Dahlia had lost. Her mother called that night to make sure she'd come. "Don't be difficult about this, Dahlia," she said. "People will talk if you don't show up. They'll say you're still bitter. You don't want that, do you? Just come, smile, do the reading, and show everyone you moved on. Show everyone you've moved on." Dahlia hung up the phone, and she sat in the dark for a long time. She could skip it and let them call her bitter forever. Or she could go alone and sit in the back and let them pity her. Or she thought about Julian Vance, standing on the frame of his unfinished house, telling her he'd been trying to find a reason to be in a room with her for 6 months. The next day, she told him everything. The whole ugly story. The ex, the sister, the family, the trap of an invitation. She didn't ask him for anything. She just told him, because she'd started telling him things. When she finished, Julian was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I'm coming with you." Dahlia shook her head fast. "No, Julian, no. I'm not going to use you to win some petty war with my family. That's not. I don't want to be the kind of person who—" Dahlia, he took her hand. "Listen to me. I'm not offering to be a prop. I'm not offering to help you get revenge." His gray eyes held hers. "I'm offering because the thought of you walking into that room alone to be hurt by people who should have protected you makes me want to burn the building down. I'm coming because I want to stand next to you. Not to win anything, just because that's where I want to be." He paused. "And if a few people happen to learn what they threw away in the process, well, that's not revenge. That's just the truth, finally getting some daylight." Dahlia looked at him for a long, long moment. "It's real?" she whispered. "Whatever this is between us, it's real?" "It's the realest thing I've got," Julian said, and Dahlia Reed, who had spent her whole life being the other sister, decided she was done being anyone's runner-up. "Okay," she said, "then let's go to a wedding." The wedding was held at St. Augustine's, the grand old stone church on the hill, with 300 guests in their finest clothes. Dahlia and Julian arrived after the guests were seated. On purpose. Dahlia wore deep red silk, a gown that hugged every curve, that announced her, that took up exactly as much room as she pleased. She did not shrink. She had spent 2 years learning how to not shrink, and now she walked through those doors like she owned the ground under them. And the whole church turned to look. She heard the whispers start. "Is that Dahlia? Is it the other Reed girl? Who is that with her weight is that? That's Julian Vance. The billionaire. That's Julian Vance." At the altar, Caleb Monroe turned to see what the fuss was. And when he saw Dahlia, radiant, glowing, on the arm of a man who could buy and sell him 1,000 times over, he dropped the champagne flute in his hand. It shattered across the marble. And Sienna, halfway down the aisle in her white dress, stopped dead. Her perfect, practiced smile froze and then cracked, because Sienna had spent her whole life being the sun. And for the first time, every face in that room was pointed somewhere else. The ceremony went ahead, somehow. Dahlia did not do the reading. She sat in a pew near the front, with Julian's hand warm in hers, and she watched her little sister marry the man who'd betrayed them both. And she felt, to her own surprise, nothing at all. No dike, no grief. Just a strange, clean, quiet peace. She thought she came for revenge. She realized, sitting there, that she'd actually come to find out she was free. It was at the reception that Caleb finally cornered her. She'd stepped away from the crowd, out onto a stone terrace for some air, and Caleb followed her. She heard his footsteps and turned, and there he was, her ex-fiancé, on his own wedding day, with his tie loosened and 3 drinks in him and a look on his face she remembered all too well. "Dahlia," he said, "my God, look at you. You look incredible." "Thank you," she said evenly. "Congratulations on your wedding, Caleb. You should get back to it." "Wait." He stepped closer, lowered his voice. "Listen, I need to say something. Seeing you tonight, with him, it's like a slap in the face. A wake-up call. I think I made a mistake, Dee. The biggest mistake of my life. Sienna, she's not like you. She's all surface. There's nothing real there. And you've clearly done so well. You're with Julian Vance, and He reached for her hand. "I keep thinking, what if it was supposed to be us? It's not too late to—" "Caleb." The voice came from the terrace doorway. It was Sienna, in her wedding dress. And behind her, drawn by the little crowd that always gathers when something is about to happen, half the reception. She'd heard. They'd all heard. Sienna's face had gone from white to a terrible, blotchy red. "You're hitting on my sister. At our wedding. An hour after you married me." Her voice climbed and shook, because she showed up with a billionaire. Caleb's mouth opened and closed like a fish. And here is where, in the old version of this story, Dahlia would have stayed quiet, would have looked at the floor, would have let everyone else decide what it all meant. But Dahlia Reed was done being quiet. She looked at Caleb, then at her sister, then at the crowd in the doorway, at her pale mother and her stunned father standing among them. 2 years ago, Dahlia said, her voice calm and clear and carrying across the whole terrace, "This man left me for my sister, and my entire family told me it was my fault. They told me I let myself go. They told me a man like Caleb was never going to stay with a woman like me. She let that land. And tonight, that same man chased me onto a balcony at his own wedding and tried to leave my sister for me. So I think we can finally put one thing to rest. She looked her mother dead in the eye. It was never about my weight. It was never about my face. Caleb didn't leave because something was wrong with me. He left because something is wrong with him. He'll leave anyone, for anything, the second something shinier walks by. Sienna didn't win a prize 2 years ago, Mom. She won him. She almost smiled. Congratulations, Sienna. You got exactly what you took. The terrace was dead silent. And then a man stepped up beside Dahlia and slipped an arm around her waist. I think, Julian Vance said quietly to the frozen, gaping crowd, we've taken up enough of your evening. He looked at Caleb with the mild, distant expression of a man looking at something he'd scrape off his shoe. Mr. Monroe, a piece of advice, since you seem to be a man who likes to climb. The world I live in is very small at the top, and everyone in it is going to hear about tonight by morning. You let that sink in. You spent your whole life trying to marry your way up. You just married your way out. Good night. And Julian turned, with Dahlia on his arm, and walked her out of that reception, past her speechless mother, past her broken sister, past the man who'd thrown her away twice, and into the warm night, where his car was waiting. Behind them, the most beautiful wedding of the season collapsed into the worst night of 3 people's lives. Sienna, who learned in front of everyone exactly what kind of man she'd married. Caleb, whose name was poisoned in every important room by the end of the week. And a mother who finally, far too late, understood which of her daughters had been the prize all along. But Dahlia didn't look back. Not even once. In the car, in the dark, she let out a long, shaking breath. And then she laughed, really laughed, the kind she hadn't laughed in years. I thought I'd feel triumphant, she said. I don't. I just feel like that's better than triumphant, Julian said. He took her hand. Triumphant fades. Free doesn't. She looked at him. This guarded, lonely, extraordinary man who had hired her to build him a home, and somewhere along the way it started to feel like one. You didn't come tonight to help me win, she said softly. Did you? No, Julian said. I came because I'm in love with you, Dahlia Reed. I have been for months. And I want to stand in a room full of people who couldn't see your worth, and let them watch me see it. He brought her hand to his lips. You were never the other sister. You were always the whole story. They just weren't smart enough to read it. Dahlia Reed, architect, survivor, the woman they all wrote off, leaned across the seat and kissed the only person who had ever looked at her and seen everything she was. The house Julian had hired her to build was finished that spring. They moved into it together, and Dahlia made sure, in every line of it, that it was a home, a real one, full of light and soft corners, a place a person could finally come home to and feel safe exactly as they were. She never lost the weight her mother had wanted her to lose. She never needed to. She had simply, finally, stopped carrying the thing that had actually been weighing her down all along, the belief that she had to be less in order to be loved. She didn't. She never had. So that's the story of how the woman they threw away walked into the wedding of the year and walked out the freest woman in the room. Her sister won the groom. But Dahlia won something her family never understood the value of, her own worth, and a love that saw all of her and chose every part. The man who left her learned too late that the prize was never the pretty one or the shiny one. It was the one with the good heart he was too small to deserve. Did that terrace moment give you chills? Did Dahlia's speech make you want to stand up and cheer? If you believe every woman deserves to be loved exactly as she is, go ahead and tap that like button. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it tonight. And subscribe to Elena Love Stories and ring that bell. Because here, the woman the world overlooks always gets the ending she deserves. Now tell me down in the comments, would you have given that speech or just walked out in silence?